Colonel Fallon, good evening, sir. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's an honor to have you here.
It's Josh. It's an honor to be here.
Yes, I've been looking forward to this conversation, and it's always great to get some fellow service members and of course, fellow Marines to come on the podcast because, I feel like throughout our service, we experience so much and we grow so much throughout our time serving this country. And so I'm certainly looking forward to hearing your story and what you've taken from your time in the Marine Corps. But if just to kind of kick this off, if we can go back in time a little bit here, I just really want to open up with just what was your inspiration and motivation to join the Marine Corps? What kind of set you down that path?
I don't know if inspiration is the right word. I would tell you that I did not know any better because I'm a Marine brat. And I was born in Camp Pendleton, and I was raised a Marine in a Marine Corps family, and I just thought it was the thing to do. At the time, I didn't think I'd make it a career, but I wanted to prove to myself that I was a man. And I don't think I could articulate that then when I joined, but on reflection, that had a lot to do with it. And a lot had to do with proving to my father that I could be a Marine. My father was World War II, China. There's China Marines, of course, are famous, Josh. And there's China Marines pre-World War II and China Marines post-World War II. But they got over that as they started getting older and dying off. At the end of the Pacific War, if you had 5 years in the Pacific theater of operation, you came home. If you were new and just got there, then you were eligible to go to China. So my father graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 3 years.
Wow.
And it's not that he was a rocket scientist. It was that the Navy and the Marine Corps needed lieutenants and JGs. And so the class of 45, United States Naval Academy, at the end of their third year, they graduated them. The institution graduated the whole class, and the whole class went to war, either in the Navy or the Marine Corps. So my father made Okinawa as a second lieutenant, and then went to China, where he met my mother. And my mother was a uniformed Red Cross officer, better known as a Donut Dolly. And she ran the coffee and donut station in the Yellow Sea port of Tin Sin, which is the port town the closest to Beijing. And there was a train that went from Tin Sin that mainly took coal up to the capital. And my father's platoon was in charge of security. And so it was a 1 day up, spend the night, 1 day back, and she worked the railroad station. The rest is history. He came home. I was born in Camp Pendleton in the third old naval hospital. We got a great new naval hospital there today, right there by the main gate, world-class facility. The hospital most people remember is over at Lake O'Neill, most of the career Marines. And then that's been shuttered, but is actually is a standby hospital for the, if we ever go to total war again, it'll come out of mothballs. But prior to it, there was an old wooden hospital at Lake O'Neill, built in World War II and not air conditioned, but had great verandas and decks where they rolled the wounded out and they could sit and get air and take a look at what is Lake O'Neill there at Camp Fenelon, which is a nice place. I'm going to drive on, and because it's a good story, you'll really appreciate. I came home to government quarters, and my government quarters were at Del Mar, Camp Del Mar, right there at the beach. So I'm a beach baby. And my father by then was a first lieutenant, and he raided half a Quonset hut. And so he entered one end of the Quonset hut, and halfway up through it was a plywood wall, and another first lieutenant was on the other end. In those days, you got government furniture by rank. You could draw it from a warehouse. And he raided a bed and a dining room table, 4 chairs, and a 4-drawer dresser. And the bottom drawer was a large drawer. They opened it up and put a blanket in it, and that was my crib. And if I made too much noise, the bottom drawer got closed. But so came home to Del Mar to a Quonset hut, and didn't know any better, and joined my freshman year of college. I joined a platoon leaders course as a walk-in, and I walked in and joined up. So that's the beginning.
And what did the conversation look like with your father once you told him that you were going to join the Marine Corps, and then also, of course, go the officer's route as well?
I stopped talking to my father, I think, when I was 14. We ran a very strict household. All conversation went through my mother. When he wasn't deployed or TAD, we had dinner at 1800. We got 3 questions at dinner. How was school? How's your homework? And what are you going to do at school tomorrow? After dinner, you had to go to your room and do homework. I stopped talking because I wasn't getting anything out of it. A little immature. He was actually immature, and he stopped talking, and all conversation went through my mother. There was no conversation with my parents when I signed up. I was 18. I signed up. I think I told them at Christmas, fine, hope you make it. I don't think he thought I could make it. And I was not a scholar, and I was lazy. I also am dyslexic. And because of moving almost every 2 years, I got a lot of the first 6 months in California, second 6 months at Camp Lejeune. It was the same 6 months, and I missed 6 months, like in the 4th grade. So I didn't know how to study. I didn't do well in school, and I think they were surprised. But ultimately, when I graduated, proud, I graduated early after I got my sea legs. Actually, the staff sergeant in Charlotte called me in, and I drove over and saw him, and he said, you're not going to get your commission. I said, why is that? So you got to have a C average. And I was on a 4.0 system, and I had a strong 1.75. I had 2 semesters to go. He says, you're not going to make it. And I'm going to have to tell the captain. He told the captain, and the captain on his next swing through called me in. I drove over there. He said, you're not going to make it. We're not going to commission you unless upon graduation, even if you graduate, you got to have a 2.0, is what the captain told me. Now, I don't know what the rules were. I became a recruiter later, and there were stricter, there was more competition. This was Vietnam. I kind of suspect if I graduated, they'd have taken me, but it lit an afterburner in me, and So I graduated in 3.5 years, December of 68. I went home. My mother was living in Virginia Beach. She took the family to Virginia Beach because she liked the beach. My father was in Vietnam, and she didn't want to stay at Camp Lejeune. So she went to Virginia Beach with my sisters and my brother, and they had a great year at the beach. And I went to basic school. Basic school was on the fast track. I think we were going through there in 4 months and a week maybe. Actually, basic school for me was, I checked in at basic school at O'Bannon Hall at 11:59 the last day, because you don't check in early because you don't want to be put on the shit detail. And the second lieutenant that had the duty, I'm in a T-shirt, said, "Well, do you know where Camp Upshur is?" I said, "Sure." And I went to PLCs at Camp Upshur. He said, "Well, that's where you have to check in." I said, "Wait a minute, I'm a second lieutenant. I'm supposed to be here at O'Bannon Hall." Nope. They were put through so many companies. Our company went to Camp Upshur, and we only got 1 month in O'Bannon Hall. And the difference was, when I was a PLC, we started with 90 in a Quonset hut, in the platoon, in bunk beds. When I became a second lieutenant, there was 30 in the platoon, and we had a single rack, and we got a double wall locker rather than a foot locker. And we still had to go outside down the road to the head, shower in the head, gang head. So we really got an upgrade to 30 and a single rack. Everybody was getting their orders, and my platoon commander called me in and said, "You're the only person in the company that's not going to Vietnam." And he could have crushed me. He said, "You're going to end up going to Camp Lejeune." "Why is that?" He said, "Well, your father's there, and they have this rule now." And it came about when 5 sons from Ohio all died a few years earlier, that only one person in a family could be in country without waivers and all that kind of I didn't know the rule. I wrote my father a letter. It was the only letter I wrote him in college, and I said, "Well, this is your second tour in Vietnam." He was a colonel by then. And I said, "You're going to ruin my career." I said, I joined the Marine Corps. I want to go to Vietnam. They're going to send me to Lejeune. I already know my way around Camp Lejeune. And basically, thanks a lot. And I'd never heard from him. We had a graduation in Little Hall. Little Hall at Quantico is the base theater, still the base theater today. But we had graduation there in the theater because it was a nice stage. People normally brought their parents. My dad was in Vietnam. My mother did not drive up from Virginia Beach. It was in choker whites, dress whites, choker collar. And they had cardboard tubes that pretended they handed it to you when you crossed the stage, like it was your diploma, but they didn't print them in time. All the diplomas were printed across the street, and the building's still there at the base printing shop. It's now been converted into a warehouse where you hook a left and go into Quantico Town. You didn't get your diploma until a couple months later, but your orders were inside the tube. And as I'm sitting there getting ready to go up there, I come back, and the platoon commander, as a captain, says, "Hey, I don't know what you did, but your orders are changed." And so when I pulled my orders out, it said I had orders to Alpha Company 5th Recon, and do not take leave, go straight to Recon Replacement School which was at Landing Force Training Command Coronado. And I read the orders, had 4 days to get there. The captain said, "Can you get there?" I said, "Yep, I can get there." And what my father had done, you got credit then for a full tour at 9 months. That was the manpower rule for career Marines, enlisted officers. So he got on the audit phone, called headquarters and said, when I hit my 9-month point, he was in the 3rd Division then. When I hit my 9-month point, cut me a set of orders for anywhere in the Marine Corps. He knew he could negotiate it. And cut my son a set of orders to go to Vietnam and wherever you think the Marine Corps needs him, blah, blah, blah. Didn't know he did that. And asked the captain, I said, "Where the hell's Alpha 5th Recon?" He said, "I've never even heard of him, had no idea." It turns out the 5th Marine Division had been activated. The regiments were activated. 5th Recon got activated. And the reconnaissance manpower breakdown is a recon company supports a regiment. And the 26 Marines were being supported by Alpha Company. And I ended up in the 3rd Platoon of Alpha Company, assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 26 Marines, 326, who were at that time in country. And so I had 4 days to get to Landing Force Training Command Coronado. And so me and one of my roommates, den mate really, at O'Bannon Hall, he came from a rich family and had a Corvette convertible. And so at graduation, we jumped in that thing and we went coast to coast in 4 days with the top down and drank a case of beer each day.
So going into recon like that. So I think that's like kind of the first instance I've ever heard where I guess you just kind of got orders without asking for it first. I mean, was recon something that you were interested in doing before you got your orders at all? Did you inquire about this in any sort of way?
Not really. There was competition at OCS, and the infantry top guys were going for Ranger School, and I was going for Ranger School and thought that I'd get a chance at it. Our class got no Ranger School slots, not because the Marine Corps didn't buy any. They needed lieutenants were getting killed so fast. They needed lieutenants. And actually, when I got to, after Recon Replacement School, when I got to Da Nang and landed, you land at night. I went through in processing. I went to 326 back office and checked in with the warrant officer. He said, "Get your gear at Supply Hut down the hill. And in 20 minutes, there'll be a chopper to take you out. You're going to Lima Company 326. I said, "Wait a minute, warrant officer." Says, "I'm supposed to be going to recon." He said, "Recon doesn't exist here. We needed those Marines, and so they were all integrated into 326. I took the chopper and flew out to Hill 190, got off the chopper, checked in with the Lance Corporal running the landing zone by himself, a PRC 25 on his back, T-shirt, pair of goggles, said, "Where's the company commander?" Said, "Top of the hill." I went up there and met the first lieutenant, a really good guy named John Rabb, R-A-B-B. And he said, "Really glad to have you. You're the 2nd officer." He was the only officer in the company. I said, "What am I going to do?" He says, "You're going to get on a 6x here in about 10 minutes, and you're going to go up and you're going to take over security for Hai Van Pass." And Hai Van Pass is a pass on National Route 1 in the mountains north of Da Nang, that if the VC or the NVA closed it, it shut down all the convoys to the 3rd Marine Division and everybody north of Da Nang. Da Nang was the major seaport, and in 1969 and 70, Da Nang International was the busiest airport in the world, dual runways, both at that time concrete, 12,000, 24 hours a day being run, and 3 MAF, Marine Amphibious Force, was the operational unit that controlled I Corps. And I Corps was the physical set of ground, the tactical area of responsibility for 3 MAF, a 3-star command. Today we call them MEFs, Marine Expeditionary Force. Changed amphibious to expeditionary. Thank you, the legend General Al Gray, for doing that. Expeditionary implies we can do more than just land. 3 MAF had I Corps, which is the 5 northern provinces of Vietnam, and commanded 4 divisions, 2 Army divisions, 2 Marine Corps divisions. So the 3rd Marine Division, 1st Marine Division. 3rd Marine Division was up on the DMZ. 1st Marine Division had the defense of Da Nang, the vital seaport and the airfield that all the logistics came in for those 4 divisions. The Americal was south, Hoi An down to Chu Lai. Chu Lai was the fighter base where all the Marine Corps fighter aircraft were based, 120 kilometers south of Da Nang, all on the coast highway. Now, this is not an interstate. This is a good macadam 2-lane road with a good single-lane cement bridge at every river and creek. But it was the north-south logistics, and parallel to it was a narrow gauge railway. In Hai Van Pass, there was about half a rifle company to keep the pass open, and the railroad had 3 tunnels. We had an ARVN company with us, and so we were paired up with ARVNs at every position. We had a Marine ARVN position about every quarter mile at a strategic turn, usually 2 or 3 Marines and 2 or 3 ARVN in a sandbag bunker on the side of the road, which meant there was a straight cliff behind you that you could pee and shit into, and macadam road across, and then straight cliff above you, and then maybe 100 feet up jungle. Sun up to sundown convoys run by the radio. You had to run in one direction to get through the pass. So you run for about an hour, hour and a half north, and then stop them and run for about an hour, hour and a half south, convoy control. And we always knew we were going to get hit. 1800 pass closed. Nobody's allowed 1800 or sundown everywhere in I Corps was curfew. So if you were outside, you're the enemy. Only people can be outside, or you can be outside patrolling, you Marine, doing a night patrol or night ambush. You bump into anybody, you can fire them up. Nobody drove on the road. So we knew every night we were going to get hit when the ARVN didn't show up at their bunker. It took me about a month to figure it out. I finally asked my radio operator, I should ask him first week, how come there's no ARVN tonight? Oh, they get the word before we do. That means we're going to get hit tonight. Oh, good to know. Do you know where we're going to get hit? Yeah, it'll be on the south side. How do you know that? Well, the ARVN are still on the north side. Only the ARVN from the south side didn't come tonight. Okay. We had double E phones with a black wire cable down to each of them. Yes, sir. I already called down and told them get ready. Every bunker had a machine gun, M60 machine gun. All the bunkers were manned by 0311s who became M60 machine gunners. And it was a game. Anyway, I spent my first 6 months in the grunts. After I was in the pass for about a month and a half, I rotated to another hill that was part of the defense of Da Nang. It was called the Da Nang Trace. They plowed with Roman plows, big earth-moving plows, about 1 football field length in the ground in a semicircle around Da Nang, right at the length of the range of a 122 millimeter rocket. And so the game was keep the guys shooting the rockets outside the trace and defend the trace. The idea was this plowed area, you kind of watched it day and night. And if you saw anybody coming across it, you could fire them up. And the trace and anything outside the trace was a free fire zone. Inside the trace during the day were rice paddies. And so you played the game of, is the guy a farmer or an NVA? By 1969 and 70, all the fighters were NVA. The VC cadre had basically been totally wiped out in the Tet Offensive of 1968, whose objective was to take every provincial capital and every district capital, which they did not achieve. The only capital they got out of the 138 plus district and provinces was Hue, because we didn't defend Hue, we, the United States. It was a ARVN defense, and in the Tet Offensive, the Lunar New Year was a national holiday, and 10 years prior to that, both sides took off and everybody went home. Tet 68, the National Party up in Hanoi, I'm having a senior moment. The head committee made a decision to go for broke on 68. And their theory was if they took over the provinces and the districts, there would be an uprising of the people, and it never happened. The people were not dissatisfied yet. The Buddhist revolt had not really materialized yet. So 68 was a huge military defeat, and now has been proven that the documents from the North Vietnamese side, after about 40 years, about 10 years ago, started coming out. But it was a huge psychological victory for the North Vietnamese because they were playing the long game and they were playing Washington, D.C., while our military leaders were playing the short game on their tour. You know, everybody had a one-year tour. Huge manpower mistake. And the measure of effectiveness was body count for us. Fine. NVA could care less about body count. Didn't mean anything. So you had a mismatch of strategic policy. You had a mismatch of operational policy and tactical policy on how the two sides fought the war. And so that's how you can win every battle and lose the war. You lose the war politically on the home turf. Now, Josh, I am known with my Marine Corps colleagues of going down rabbit holes, and I just went down a rabbit hole. So you got to cut me off, man, and keep us where you want to go. Your show.
Well, like I said, yes, I am a fellow Marine, and so of course I always like hearing these kinds of stories. But what I would like to, of course, ask you about now is ultimately how you made it onto Hill 119. At like what point did you link up? You were with Delta Company, 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, if I recall, when you went there. So can you fill us in on that? And then when you found your way to the Hill?
Yeah, it's a great segue because I finished my 6 months in the grunts, and they had a thing where officers and senior enlisted could do a split tour and supposedly get an easier job on a staff in the rear if you wanted to. If you didn't, you could stay in the field and usually move up the chain. Become first lieutenant, you might become a company XO or a company commander if you really had your shit together, or might pick up 81s or 106 recoilless rifle platoon was the anti-tank, one of two anti-tank platoons. It was the battalion platoon. Actually, I didn't do anything. I got a radio. I was on a hill called 124 with about 100 Marines from Lehman Company, and a morning radio call for our. We got a once a week logistic resupply by a CH-46 to RLZ, which was outside of our wire on our hill, dug in an underground bunker. And we lived on the hill during the daytime and ran night patrols and night activities, try to catch the infiltrators in the daytime. The radio operator said, tell the 6 on the hill to pack all this trash and get on the bird. And come back to company. So I thought I was just getting another company assignment. I got on the bird, got to company, and Lieutenant Rabb, the same company commander, said, I didn't think you wanted to go to the staff. You're going to the rear. I said, I didn't ask to go to the staff. I don't want to. He said, well, we got a call. You got to go to the rear. Wait a half hour, get the next bird to the rear. Go to the rear, blah, blah, blah. I go in to see the same warrant officer, 326 rear on Hill 327. And he said, you're a son of a bitch for leaving us. Here are your orders. Turn in your weapon, 2 weapons. I had an M16 and a 45. And good luck. I said, well, can I get a ride? He said, nope. At the bottom of the hill was a 2-lane macadam road. Everybody hitchhiked in Vietnam. So, I got my sea bag, felt a little exposed. I was in my one set of utilities that I've been wearing for about 2.5 months, and walked down to the road, put my thumb out, first 6-by stopped, threw my bag up. The driver said, where are you going? I said, 1st Recon. Do you know where it is? Yep. You got it 2 miles down the road. Went down the road. He dropped me off at the gate. Got off at the gate. There was a private standing the gate in a helmet liner. The old trick when you had that steel pot. That was heavy on your neck 12, 18 hours a day. In the rear, they took the helmet liner and painted it green like a helmet and just wore the helmet liner, kept the steel pot in the guard shack. So the kid's wearing a helmet liner. I said, where's the S1? He said, down the hill on the left. I went down there and I asked the lieutenant, LDO lieutenant, how did I get here? He said, well, you went to you didn't go to Ranger school, you went to Recon Replacement School. And I said, yeah, well, recon lieutenants are getting killed faster than anybody. And so somebody said, you made it 6 months in the grunts. Welcome to recon. You're assigned to Delta Company. Keep on walking. Go to Delta Company. Went over there, met the company commander, was a captain. He said, well, you've been to recon replacement school. You've been in country 6 months. You're going on patrol tomorrow. I'll have your patrol leader come in and, you go with them and he'll break you in. So a Corporal Franklin came over, and I'd been in country long enough to know that I should shut my mouth and listen to people that had been there. I said, Franklin, I'm First Lieutenant Fallon. I'm coming from the grunts. I'm going on patrol with you tomorrow. I realize you don't want to do that. I said, I'm here to learn. I'll do it. What do you want me to do? He said, well, you can be the M79, man. You carry the M79 and your M16. We always take an M79. Good enough. How many rounds? He said 40 rounds. Josh, 40 rounds is a lot of 40 millimeter individual M79 rounds. It's about, I said, well, how am I going to carry that? He says, we got some old demolition satchel charge canvas bags that the C4 blocks come in. So this is like 16 quarter-pound C4 blocks come in these canvas bags. That'll take 40 rounds. And when they gave me 40 rounds, I put it around my neck. We went on. I was the seventh man. They stuck me in the middle. And I soon realized this was my test. And so I humped the 40 rounds. It really tore your neck up, bent them over. And it was a 5-day humper. It was, we didn't see anything. You don't talk when you're in recon, hand and arm signals. They didn't talk to me. They talked on the radio. I learned a little bit. Welcome to recon. Recon was reinforced then. They had 7 patrolling companies, Alpha through Echo Company. Alpha 5th Recon was 6. First Force Recon lived there off and on. It was ADCON, OPCON, off and on, depending on who the general was. So 7 reconnaissance companies. They were all plushed up with an additional platoon, which was a 4th platoon. And each platoon had 3 teams, except the 4th platoon had 4 teams, which gave a company 13 teams. Who knows? Recon had to have observation posts and radio relays to go deep. And so each company manned a radio relay that was a standard hill that they kept. And some of them were just radio relays, like a hill called Banat. It was an old French resort west of Da Nang with a hotel on top of it. It was in the clouds, literally all winter long. Old dirt road went up to it. It's like 1,100 meters in the sky, and the radio relay was in the first floor check-in of the dilapidated hotel, and the LZ was the old tennis court, and the aristocracy and the French infantry that ran Da Nang when they were running the country went there in the summer to escape the heat down in the lowlands. The Delta Company hill was Hill 119, which happened to be the lowest hill and the only hill that was really close to the Da Nang Trace. And it was a little hill that was the last finger of the Quezon Mountains, south of Da Nang, about 25 nautical miles and it overlooked an island called Gonoi Island, which was in a big delta, the Song Tabong River, and it was called the An Hoa Basin. And about 5 miles west of Hill 119 was An Hoa Combat Base, home of the 5th Marine Regiment for a very long time. And what happened was that finger was used as a jumping off point a lot of times by the grunts when they did sweeps of Gonoi Island. There were never enough grunts to hold Gonoi Island, and so they'd sweep it and clean it off. Gonoi Island was a rice paddies on the western half. It was divided 2/3 to the west, 1/3 to the east by a north-south railroad. That was the old railroad. The railroad was built up on a berm about 20 feet above the water line. And in 1969, no trains ran south, but the berm and the line was still there. East of the berm was gardens with vegetables that were cordoned off with bamboo and bamboo stands and thickets, and still flooded in natural flood, but vegetables. And it was a breadbasket of Da Nang. And the South Vietnamese government had moved the population off the island to strategic hamlets further east along Route 1, but the families could still go there during the daytime and farm the fields. And so the whole island was contested day and night, and the truth was the NVA controlled the island, unless you put a Marine battalion up to 7 Marine battalions to sweep it. And if you did that, the NVA would just fall back. They very rarely fought you for the island. One night's hump into the Quezon Mountains, which was triple canopy jungle, steep cliffs and boulders, which was their base area 116. Hill 119 overlooked Gonoi Island, and actually it was a tasker from division during an operation called Taylor Common. And in Operation Taylor Common, the 1st Division got an extra regiment, and so they were going to go with one regiment reinforced and go on the offense a little bit and sweep Gonoi Island. And then they wanted to push due west of An Hoa and go into base area 112, which is further up the river. But they decided to put an OP on this finger and gave the mission to recon, because what happened is when a battalion swept, the battalion's own snipers watched the front, but they tended to get sniped at from the rear. So it was a pretty good idea, really. This recon OP was going to watch the grunts. When the grunts sweep, they would put 2 or 3 rifle companies on line at double arms interval in the rice paddies, and you get hit with one sniper round and you go down. Or they would, if they wanted to ambush you, they would put in a couple machine gun nests and you'd walk into a U-shaped ambush. And after you messed with them, they would hit you from the rear with a sleeper guy coming up out of a tunnel. So the OP was a pretty good guy, and it actually worked pretty good. A Delta Company didn't have an OP or a radio relay. They got that mission in January of 1969, and the mission fell to the company. The company commander was a guy named Wilson, G.R. Wilson, captain, second tour guy, Ranger School guy, still going on patrol. He went out, he decided to take a patrol, go out, and it was a one-day patrol. He took 10 guys, took a camera and his sketchbook. He landed on Hill 148, which is up the finger, and is actually a better hill from a defensive point of view, and actually looks right down the gully of 119, like a click away. And the problem was it couldn't see the first steel railroad bridge from the south side of the bank over to Goonoi Island. He had to go over to Hill 119 to see that. And that bridge was used to call them a high-speed trail the NVA used every night. And so the OP wanted to get it. Anyway, so Wilson recommended that be the OP, brought back the report, went to battalion, went to division. They said, well, you're the guy that's going to man it. He recommended 119. So he went out there with a platoon a week later when Taylor Common kicked off, and found out you couldn't dig in because the ridgeline, the water had, over the 1,000 years, got down all this hard rock. And so the sandbags there went above ground, which aren't very good, them RPG targets. So you had to blow holes in the rock, and that was like a year evolution. So Delta Company manned the hill, and Wilson designed it to be held by one recon platoon, 6 bunkers, 2 to 3 Marines, a bunker in an elliptical oval like an egg on the military crest of Hill 119, razor wire out front, bunkers, 292 radio, strap it on and hold the enemy off. There were 4 platoons in Delta Company, and so you got to go up there for 2 weeks. And so every 2 months, you got 2 weeks on the hill. So if you were a reconnaissance Marine assigned to a patrolling company, any of the patrolling companies, your life was 6 months patrolling in the bush, 2 weeks on the hill. When you went on a patrol, the normal patrol, flexible based on mission, but normally there was a set pattern driven by helo inserts and extracts in a good weather, or truck inserts and extracts in bad weather, or a combo. And you go out 5 to 7 to 10 days, come back 2 to 3 days, go back out, and be run by a team. Lieutenant would usually rotate between teams, but after his platoon solidified, he picked a team and stuck with it. And then once a month, he went to the hill for 2 weeks. When you went to the bush, everybody paid attention. There was no speech. There was no motivation. You relied on the other 5 Marines and a corpsman, or 6 Marines. Every patrol had a corpsman or a Marine aid man. First Recon ran a month school that was really taught by First Med Battalion, where any Marine, you could send a Marine to aid man school for a month, and it was like becoming a junior doc. And you got a Unit 1, you did IVs, you got all the drugs. You took everything the corpsman took. It was because there was a shortage of corpsmen.
Right.
So you went on patrol with an aid man and or a doc. And those were adrenaline filled, not very much sleep or poor sleep. You slept on the ground, no fires, no lights, no talking, tiring. Everybody lost weight on every patrol.
I bet.
And then you gained weight in your 2 or 3 days in the rear. But the cycle was so bad that everybody over 3 or 4 months, I mean, there were some hardcore dudes. There was skin and taut muscle. When they went to the hill, everybody took it as a time off. And on every other OP except maybe 425, which was on the shoulder of the Quaisans, was very vulnerable too. And that rotated between Echo Company and Charlie Company. Those hills weren't going to get hit very often or at all, and you could kick back. Well, Hill 119, you couldn't kick back, but the Marines didn't believe it. And so they wanted to kick back. And so it was the hill commander, the lieutenant, or sometimes a gunny or a staff sergeant, usually lieutenant. He had to worry about that. And Hill 119 got so good at killing the NVA. The two hills that killed NVA every day, every week, every month were 425 and 119 because they were astride infiltration routes that the enemy needed to get to Da Nang. The other radio relays, they could go around them. They could ignore the hill. They knew there was a radio relay there, but why mess with it? They could just go around it and they would get their job done, going east to west, either bringing replacements in or bringing logistics and bullets. So when I decided to write a book, a lot of people write memoirs. I didn't want to do that. I'm a little history buff. I started looking. I said, I got to have a start and an end. I did some research. And so this is a history book. I did history criteria and documented everything. And the research for me turned out to be fun because I got to interview Marines and corpsmen. The problem is when you start interviewing people after 50 years, their mind, not deceitful, their mind blends 2 or 3 stories and it becomes a blended story. So I would interview everybody, take it down word for word, but to make the book, it had to be crosswalked against a patrol report or command chronology. Now, all Marine squadrons and battalions do a monthly command chronology. And they're all now, the Marine Corps cut a deal, Marine History Division, with Texas Tech. And so the Lyndon B. Johnson, Sam Houston, Vietnam Memorial Research Institute at Texas Tech told the Marine Corps, we'll digitize everything from Vietnam if you'll give us your written records. So they've got a huge digitized library that's a blessing to Vietnam researchers, and they've gone on and done the other services too. But when they started with the Marine Corps, this is like 20 years ago, they didn't start with a searchable engine. They started with, we're going to put this into a scanner and digitize it. So when you search, you got to know the name and the protocol that Texas Tech uses. And so you can search First Recon November 69. It'll give you a PDF, 300 pages of the First Recon or HMM 263. and you get the squadron command chronology, and you can download it and read the whole thing. You got to know acronyms and all that stuff. So great research tool. Recon Battalion, when you finished a patrol, you landed at LZ 401, which was the home LZ for 1st Recon at Camp Reasoner, named for Medal of Honor winner Frank Reasoner. Camp Reasoner was built by 3rd Recon Battalion, 1965. It's right below Hill 327, where the 3rd Division was. When they decided to put 2 Marine divisions in, the 1st Division had been at Chulai, and the 3rd Division had been at 327. And 3 MAF got an Army division. They decided everybody would move north. The Marines wanted to keep the DMZ and Da Nang. So I don't know, I've never found out the reason. Logistically, it would have been easier to leapfrog 1st Division to Dong Ha and give them the DMZ, but they didn't do that. 3rd Division wanted to go north. The MAF commander at the time made that decision. And so 1st Recon inherited 3rd Recon's base camp, which it was Korean era tents, but they were hard stand. They later got beefed up with CB built stuff. 1st Lieutenant Frank Reasoner, Alpha Company commander, got killed on a patrol 12 kilometers south. Won the Medal of Honor trying to save a couple of his Marines on that patrol. So that was Camp Reasoner, was a good deal, and I went down a rabbit hole. So Delta Company got the hill. Oh, every patrol, we got debriefs. So you got off the LZ, you went to S2, could not pass go. The S2 shop debriefed you. Some debriefs were good, some were not good. You can read patrol leaders that cared or debriefers that were talented. And so you could get a Lance Corporal debriefer, which meant that in recon in our day, didn't mean he was a REMF. For him to get that, he had to do 20 patrols as a recon Marine. And then to get a break, he went to S2. They usually typed patrol reports at night, but if you get good at that, they let him debrief teams coming in. And he was usually on a fast-tracked corporal. If it was a patrol of significance, then the S2 captain or the Alpha would sometimes debrief, or the gunny, or the staff sergeant. You know, the 2 shop was big. All of those patrol reports are in there. So now if I'm briefing Corporal Hernandez and he's talking about Team Fig Newton, emergency extract coming in on the ladder, 3 wounded Marines snap blinked on, I can record all that and get his view and usually 1 or 2 other of his buddies and call them and interview them on the phone or face-to-face at 50 years. But I can also go get the Fig Newton patrol report. And what it does is it gives you the grids. And you can take a map, 1 to 50, look it up. The timelines. I can build a play box. And then I go back and re-interview them and say, now you're really south of the creek. And we know this because the LZ was south of the creek. So let's not worry about that. And you were getting the shit shot out of you. And you put it. Good teams did the right things. The wounded guys went on the ladder first. The ladder got replaced by the spy rig, special patrol insertion extraction rig, which is a rig that comes down from the 46 I want you to have me back so I can talk about Lieutenant Colonel Leftwich, night he died, who is the namesake of the Leftwich Trophy given to the Ground Captain Leadership Award, Marine of the Year, and Recon Team Rush Act, who they were pulling out in a spy rig. My team, I called the extract that day. So I lost my team, lost my executive officer, lost my battalion commander. That's a different story. It's a good story. The book Hill 119, to answer your question, Josh, I did the statistics, 600 days, got some of the NVA stuff. General Ben, 2nd NVA Division, so pissed at losing guys that sent the T-89 Sapper Battalion against the hill. I talk about how they came against the hill. The NVA developed a battle 180 different than we do. We have the tail respond to the teeth, and we have 14 logistics Marines or sailors to one rifleman between the firefight and Barstow, in the supply chain. It's higher for jet planes. That's tooth-to-tail ratio. The NVA built up the logistics first, set the battle stage and the environment, build it, the ambush site, squad, size, regiment, division, bury the logistics, and then suck you into an ambush and fight you till they're out of ammo and then disappear. The problem with 119 is they couldn't get around the supply routes. And then what happened was they learned the daytime distance and the nighttime distance, and the trails went a little bit further in a bow shape around them between the Quaison Mountains and Ganoi Island, where they had underground bunkers, was one night's hump. In the NVA, everything is measured by the time distance of a 1 day's hump or 1 night's hump. So on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which is lots of trails, the trail guide, which is a NVA sergeant major that brings down a draft of 100 recruits, he does 1 day's hump with just him. Sometimes he has a new trail guide that's his assistant pulling up the rear. His 100 guys, based on terrain, they do 1 night, and there's a way station. And at the way station, there's a unit that mans, of old people and mama sons, that man the way station. You pull in, it's like a truck stop. You get hot rice, you get a drink, you get a shack, bamboo, you get to sleep. When the sun comes up, you're humping. The next day, if it's uphill, it's a shorter hump. Well, same way when you take a branch off the trail to get to a base area. The base area is run by the division. 2nd NVA Division, a general named Ben, and we fought Ben for 7 years. So we kept changing generals. We kept changing hill commanders. So we had 26 different hill commanders in 600 days fighting. The VC infrastructure lady that we were fighting lived in a village at the base of the hill. We all knew her. She was the one-armed woman. You can look into Hill 119 and see her picture. She lost her arm fighting for the Viet Minh, and she, in the daytime, was the elder and was a recognized South Vietnamese elder, part of the Vietnam province leadership, lived in the strategic hamlet. She was also VC infrastructure, #1 political officer for the district, which means she'd take a pistol out and pop you. One-armed woman. So the 26 Hill Commanders, some of them only got to, most of them served 1 or 2 terms up there. A group of 4 or 5 of us got 5 trips up. It took a couple trips up to figure out the game. We were segued about 35% in from January of 90 to October. Human eyeball, scope on an M40 sniper rifle, starlight scope at night, or a thing called a nod, which was a starlight scope times 4x on a tripod. And so at night, on a good night, clear night, it captures the light from the stars and the moon, same as a starlight scope, the ambient light that's there. So if it's raining and cloudy, you don't see nothing. And of course, the enemy knows that, so they just book on by you, right? That's when you got to have ambushes out. If you don't have ambushes out, they're not going to mess with you. They're going to book on by you. Their goal is to either get the fighter or the logistician, the guy carrying 80 pounds of rice, from the base area to Gunoi Island, which was 1 day's march from the port and the airfield of Da Nang and the city. And so in 10 of 68, they got the word they're supposed to take Da Nang. There's a VC company in Da Nang. They rise up and they get wiped out. 1 night's march away, Gunoi Island is their logistics base. They rise up, Tet 68, they get wiped out that day. I mean, because there's too many Marines. I mean, it's just easy. So 119 is like a fishing bobber that's sitting there. And at that October of 69, we have a technology insertion, so we get to talk about that in the book, with the Office of Naval Research, which is still around, still supporting the Marine Corps, old ONR, and the Marine Corps had a project and a program called the SPEED program. It's in the book, Special Projects, Enhanced Environment something, throw money to organizations. They developed the first integrated observation device, which is something we do all the time. Marines integrate legacy stuff onto one big tripod. The breakthrough was the laser rangefinder. And they had this box built by RCA, the RCA company.
I'm familiar with it.
You hit the button and you had to make commands like you were recruit at the rifle range. The Marines loved it because if you looked at the laser, you'd lose your eyesight. Hey,
right.
Ready to laze. Stand by to laze. Lazing. And this big red laze would go out. The digital readout would tell you the distance. And so you could do a polar plot because we brought the meteorological survey platoon from the Arty Regiment up to Hill 119 and registered where it was. And then the artillery guns were at the combat base at Anwa. And so when you shoot straight to Gunoi Island, in the Fire Direction Center, it's a math problem. There's no adjust. It's, I want 1 battery or 3 batteries, fire for effect. 18 rounds in the air within 5 meters. We got that puppy up there, classified secret at the time. Game changer. And hockey stick number of kills. And the first 2, the Marines got 10. 3MAF got 10 systems. 4 went to the Army down the Americal. 6 to the Marines. Recon got 4 of them. First 2 went on 119 and 4 Hill 425. And now I got patrol reports and the Army now started sending FOs. So now you got double reporting, which is interesting because it already wanted to claim credit for body count. Recon had it in their SOP. So you got body count going up 2 chains. I am totally sure it was double counted at some point because it all got rolled up in Saigon for the daily count, which was the weekly count, which went to the 4-star. So what they keep feeding back to Washington, we're killing the shit out of them, which they were. Everybody was killing. They didn't care because the communist philosophy is similar to the sick, diehard communist, to the jihad. You die, you're going to a good place with the communist. And your family will get a stipend for life, is what they tell them. So 119 became a killing machine. I got all the stats, all the charts, but the real stories are Big Eye, Lance Corporal I. Everybody loved him. There's two lakes close to 119, and the Marines would like to sneak down and do swim call. You can't do swim call unless you can put security out. If you don't have enough Marines, you might get hit, blah, blah, blah. Some of the Marines would take a patrol, 5 men, wired. You got to check your wire. If you don't check your wire every day, sappers cut it the night before, or turns your claymores around. Big Eye goes down to take a swim call. He tries a triple gainer off one of the rocks, lands on a rock, breaks his kneecap. Now the patrol's got to call a medevac. Well,
sounds like something a Marine would do.
Because they can't call a medevac and get one because Big Eye broke his kneecap on a triple gainer. We're in enemy contact. Big Eye's got, we got a priority medevac. We got to get Lance Corporal Ayatoni out. And so I know we're running out of time. I got 3 objectives of the book. Learn from our mistakes. We had booby traps. They're IEDs. We had everyone you saw in Iraq and Afghanistan, we experienced. Big, little, dirty, smart, dumb, command detonated. Read it and learn from our mistakes, Marines. The second, the institution doesn't cut the human element of reconnaissance out of the force structure. You got to be able to put eyes on. Technology is good. It never can tell you intent. It can never tell you what's really happening. You got to have the capability at the right moment to put eyes on when you, as the commander, elected to. Technology can help the team. And last, to honor our missing and those who died. So those are the 3 objectives in the book, the 3 environments I talked about. The rear, chicken shit, spit and polish. You get caught in the rear, you got to burn shitters, you got to polish your boots, you got to look good. You go to the hill, you don't have to do that. You can get on top of the bunker and sunbathe, or you might get ambushed, or rocket attacked, or mortar attacked, or human wave attack that we talk about in the book. You go on patrol, we pick a couple patrols, talk about their extracts, some of the good extracts coming out and some of the characters. The book is Hill 119. The publisher's Casemate. They're a historical niche outfit. Go to their website. If you're a history or a war buff, they got World War I, World War II. They don't do anything, and then they make sure it meets the historical criteria. And you can pre-order on Amazon. I'm going to be at the first Recon reunion, Pentagon City, 10 to 15 August, a couple weeks from now. Bring your book. I'll sign the autograph. I'm going to talk about it. We're doing the memorial ceremony for Lieutenant Colonel Leftwich, Team Rushak, in the National Museum of the Marine Corps' chapel that overlooks the National Museum of the Marine Corps on 12 noon in that chapel above the museum. 14 August. The eulogy will be by Lieutenant General Chip Gregson, alumni of 1st Recon Battalion, earned his stripes as a patrol leader, platoon commander, S3 Alpha and company commander. At the reunion, we're going to talk about Team Rushak, Corporal Long John Stockman, Team Rushak team leader, former 3rd Reconner, 54 long-range patrols.
Wow.
54.
Goodness.
If in a good year, you can get 20. In a good year. Long John arguably was one of my best patrol leaders. I say arguably. My first sergeant was still taking patrols. His name was Maurice Jacks. And First Sergeant Maurice Jacks, you can read his biography. Doc Norton, another Recon Corpsman, wrote it. When he was my first sergeant in Bravo Company, he was in his 40th month in Vietnam, month 40. And he would take when he needed a team, he'd take the company office. Same rule, you couldn't get in the company office unless you had 20 patrols. He put the lock on the door, put a sign in the company, when he saw a patrol he wanted. And Maurice Jacks, the battalion commander wanted POWs. I mean, you get a POW, you got to risk it. You got to get in a firefight usually. Then you got to run. He put incentive out. Anybody gets a POW gets an R&R. Real quick. Maurice Jacks saw that, put a lock on, went up to the 3 shop, got the master sergeant at the 3 shop, put me in next to Quezon Village. Well, Quezon Village, every morning all the mamasans come out to the edge of the woods to cut firewood, to take firewood back for the stoves in the morning. And they come out pre-light. You know, Jacks inserts it. He picked a box next to it. He inserts there. Mamasan comes out. He walks out, grabs her, 65 pounds, calls an extract. I got a POW, get an immediate extract. You drop it at the 3 MAF POW compound where ITT is. Drop her off, hand him. She's VC infrastructure. He goes back to LZ 401, got the POW, takes the company Jeep to Da Nang, gets on the daily C-130 to Okinawa because he knows the schedule. He's married to a Ryukin lady, and she lives in Okinawa. So he gets a week in Okinawa with his wife and kids. Comes back. The battalion commander's on the radio chewing my butt. I'm in the Quezon Mountains on patrol, getting my butt chewed. Anyway, Maurice Jacks, legends in recon, because they stayed. You wanted to talk about morale? The best morale of any unit I've ever been into. But you had to want to be in the unit. And if you wanted to stay, Gunnery Sergeant Terry Moore in the SOF Hall of Fame. He got a battlefield commission in January of 71. So Terry Moore was my training gunny in Delta Company on his 4th tour. He always wanted to be a first sergeant. He's on a first sergeant's list. And they call him up to division, and the assistant division commander says, "We're short lieutenants. You're a second lieutenant." He says, "I don't want to be a second lieutenant. I want to be a first sergeant." "Gunny, you didn't listen to me. Here are 2 brown bars. The 1st Division's battlefield commissioning you. You're a second lieutenant." puts him on, goes back to recon. He was already running a recon platoon as a gunny then. Recon comes home in April. The Marine Corps is post-Vietnam. We shrink again. The officer corps shrinks. All the battlefield commission guys either have to revert to enlisted or they get an offer they can't refuse. His offer was he could stay an officer. They'd let move him and make him an MP. He says, no, make me an MP. I want to be a grunt. There didn't have recon officer MOSs then in those days. We do today, which is probably a mistake. That's another rattle. They make him an MP. He spends 19 years and retires as a LDO, limited duty officer MP. But he gets put in this special ops Hall of Fame, nominated by the Army dudes, based on what he did at MACV-SOC, Marine Advisory Group, Studies and Operations Group, the cover name.
Right.
Josh, you've been polite to let me talk. If you invite me back, I'll come again and talk your ear off. I'm not cutting you off. What questions do you have for me?
All right. Well, it's just like you said, we are barely scratching the surface here. We can do plenty of episodes on your story alone. But of course, like you mentioned, you did condense it all into the book. Your own personal accounts, the accounts of other Marines that were there at the time, and then, of course, records that we were able to save and salvage from that time and have since become digitized. It's all in here. So yeah, it's just, and you mentioned that this is on Amazon, and where else can we find it? Is it mostly just on Amazon, sir?
Josh, you can also go to casematepublishers.com.
That's right.
If you're a recon guy and can't wait, go there because they're shipping right now. If you join Casemate, you're a history buff, you can get 30% off. I hope Daniel, the marketing guru from Casemate that got me on your show, there's a plug for you, Daniel. Go to Casemate and buy it. You'll get it within 2 days. They're shipping out of their warehouses in Ruston. I'm getting emails from all the recon guys now that they're saying, hey, I got it. I say, good. I'm happy. Thank you very much, Josh. You've been quite the host and polite to let me run on.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure, sir. And I'll have a link in the show notes for this episode, or if we have viewers who are watching us talk on YouTube, links will be down in the description below for Casemate and Amazon, where they can go pick up a copy of the book. It'll be right there. All right. Well, as we start winding down here, I have a couple of standard questions that I like to ask all my guests towards the end of the show. And of course, I like to ask you these questions as well. And the first thing I like to ask my guests to do is to issue a challenge to our listeners and viewers, because we got to hear some incredible stories from you today and from your amazing adventures that you had through your time in the Marine Corps and in Vietnam. But I always say that stories, information, inspiration really can only take our listeners and viewers so far. If we want our audience to go out and do amazing things themselves, they're going to have to follow up with action when they're done listening to us talk today. So with that, what challenge would you issue to our listeners and viewers today for them to go out there and start living a more adventurous life?
So, Josh, it's a great question. I've actually watched your show, so I knew the question was coming. I don't have an original challenge. I will do a bifurcated one. For those Marines, special operators of any service, and contractors who think they're special operators, the challenge is one that one of my mentors, General Al Gray, did was you owe it to those you lead, whether you're a Lance Corporal and you lead as a Lance Corporal, to read and do your homework. And a professional Marine can be a 4-year Marine, a 24-year Marine, a 34-year Marine. You got to read the books at every rank. So my challenge is read the books for your rank if you're in the Marine Corps in the Commandant's reading list. The Chief of Naval Operations has a reading list. If you're a civilian and you're an adventure person and come to Josh's place, my same challenge. If you're going to go to the Amazon, read the books about the Amazon, read The Lost City of Z, and find out what it's like to go upriver. You can still go upriver from Manaus, Brazil, if you got the guts. And Josh knows what I'm talking about. But before you go, talk to Josh, and he'll tell you where to read or where to go online. Or if you're adventuresome enough, he might come with you. So that it's basically what your mother told you. Do your homework. That's the challenge. And you'll be safe, you'll have fun, and you'll take care of the people you're leading. Or you'll be a good follower, and when that person gets hurt and you have to step up to a leadership role, you have to always be able to take over the person in front of you and intellectually know the job two up. So try to be short and sweet. There you go.
Absolutely. Outstanding, sir. All right. For what I have next for you is my final three. Again, three fun questions. At least I like to think that they're fun questions that I ask all my guests at the end of the show. So, of course, you're going to get asked these as well. And the first of these three questions is, what is your favorite place that you've been to so far?
The southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula and the Eastern Orthodox cathedral and monastery called St. Catharina's that's in the mountains that overlook the southern tip, Sharm el-Sheikh or Ras Suhana, depending on which side you're on, and the beautiful Red Sea, which we'll talk about in a future. And I went there before it was easy to get to, and people with money, and it became a tourist place. I went there when you went there on your foot or on a camel in the 1970s.
All right. Outstanding. And next question. What is one thing on your bucket list that you have yet to do?
I've got a long bucket list. The closest one that might actually happen is I want to take Leslie Powell's second route from the headwaters of the Green River in Wyoming down the Green to the Colorado through the Grand Canyon. And you basically got to stop at Yuma. I think I'll get a kayak and go 100 feet into Mexico because we're releasing a little water to bring the delta back. But that's a 3 ecosystem, still a hard raft trip, especially the Grand Canyon part.
I bet.
And worth it. But nowadays it's expensive. You got to buy passes. If you can do it illegally. I mean, and college student and venture guys grab kayaks, and every year you read about 1 or 2 dudes that do it and make it, or 1 or 2 dudes that die because they haven't done their homework. And the place you die, there are places in the Grand Canyon where there's no portage. You got to go to the rim, or you got to shoot the rapids. And if you don't know, Lake Powell Glen Canyon Dam does a release. It's not scheduled. And you're 3 weeks down Glen Canyon. You don't know it's coming. Stand by. That's a grade 10 rapid and you're not going to make it through.
Oh, wow.
Anyway,
sounds crazy.
That's the one that's still doable on the bucket list. Thanks for asking.
Yep. All right. It sounds amazing. All right. And the last of these three questions, and this is a two-parter. What is your favorite animal, and have you seen this animal in the wild?
It's a turtle. Got a turtle on my forearm. I don't know how to make the camera go. So back in the UDT days, early SEAL days, guys that swam off subs took shit from the crew, SEALs and UDT guys locking out of a submarine were called SEALs. And that could be a complimentary term, or you could take shit. Marines were not SEALs or UDT guys. To UDT guys and SEALs, qualified Marines were turtles. So the USS Grayback, your listeners can look it up, LPSS 574. What's that mean? Landing platform ship submersible. Read submarine. First special ops submarine. First one. USS Grayback, diesel, one of the early cruise missile firing submarines, went into Mare Island, got converted. They took all the missile silos out, put two huge lockout chambers on the deck out front, like two big tits on the front of this submarine, big ugly thing. Home ported her in Subic Bay. Who? Number one home port, Subic Bay, the Philippines, USS Grayback. Well, if you were a swimmer in those days, you had to be UDT, SEAL, or Marine Recon, had been through the training, and so you were a turtle. Ever since then, my favorite animal is a turtle, and I love sea turtles. They're beautiful and beautiful animal. That's my number one animal.
All right.
You said it was a two-parter. It was sea turtle.
Well, if you've seen them in the wild, which it sounds like you have.
The number one. When you bring me back, we'll do an episode on where you should go scuba diving if you want to go with your backpack or if you want to go with your Rolodex and your money. Best scuba diving places in the world. We'll talk scuba diving. You want to see sea turtles down the ABC Islands, right off Venezuela, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. All the sea turtles are on Bonaire. And the Bonaire, you don't go to Bonaire unless you want to go diving. It's the dive island. Nothing else there. It's a desert island. You in Bonaire Harbor, I took my wife snorkeling. She doesn't like the deep blue psychological thing. She sticks with me as a snorkeler. Got to see a mama and her baby sea turtles in the harbor. There's an island in Bonaire Harbor, sea turtle nesting area. We went there for a week. There's a couple motels. They're not hotels. You open up the sliding glass door and the water, if it's super high tide, it's on your balcony coming in your room. You know, it's that type, but it's a dive hotel, right? You put on your flippers, go right off the balcony. The island is a nesting area. So on dive one, week one in Bonaire, I show my bride, she said, we don't have to go in. I said, great, we can go to the bar. Anyway, yeah, sea turtles.
All right, sea turtles, it is outstanding. All right, well, Colonel Fallon, I want to thank you very much for taking the time for joining me today and sharing your story with myself and the listeners. This has been great. And like I said, Hill 119 is the book. I'll leave links in the show notes for this episode, as well as the YouTube description for us talking on that platform. It'll all be down there below for them to click away and find it. But yeah, I really appreciate you, like I said, being here tonight and sharing your stories and insights with myself and the listeners, sir. This has been great.
Josh, I appreciate the time. Semper Fi to you and all our Marine listeners and all those people that support Marines.
All right. Hoorah, sir.
Hoorah.